Hello, everybody. This is BTerrell, Managing Partner at BTerrell Group. Thank you for joining me for a BTerrell training webinar entitled Automating Bank Reconciliations in Sage Intacct. In this presentation, we'll share best practices, tips and tricks, and key concepts around performing bank reconciliations in Sage Intacct. Grab a seat and get comfortable. The webinar has just begun. Today on this timely topic, so let's dive right in. The BTerrell Group has been providing mid-market accounting and finance automation for over 27 years, 5 of those years as a leading Sage Intacct partner in North Texas. And concurrently, we've been a development partner, which Sage calls a Sage Intacct marketplace partner. Today, we have 18 professional staff members. 3 of those are Sage Intacct certified consultants, and 4 are CPAs. I've been a CPA for more years than I care to remember, 27 of those as the original Sage certified consultant at BTerrell. I do other things in the community, but the thing that I enjoy, or one of the things I enjoy the most, is being a ride leader for the Plano Bicycling Association. Today's training session, which we've entitled Automating Sage Intacct Bank Reconciliations, has the objective of reviewing key Sage Intacct Bank reconciliation concepts, learning how to onboard or add a new bank account to a Sage Intacct instance, which might happen if we were obviously converting and beginning a new relationship with a new customer, but it might also happen to those of you who are currently Sage Intacct customers if you were to acquire an existing company as well as the bank accounts that are involved with that. We will demonstrate a lot of the real world, frustrating, challenging, difficult things that are all around getting it all set up and running smoothly. I think you'll see that as we try to anticipate the learning curve that you might have as you begin to use the automation that's presented by Sage Intacct for bank reconciliations. And we'll answer the key question, which is, what's up with those import files, which is a major step in making sure that the bank account is the bank reconciliation process is as automated as possible. Throughout the presentation, we'll stop and share tips and tricks, as well as provide some best practices along the way. Starting at the beginning with key bank reconciliation concepts, I'm reminded that the ledger that I have in my office and the ledger that you have in your office, these are primary ledgers to us. And because business requires trust in order to complete a transaction, and we begin all business relationships from a position of maybe not mistrust, but certainly there's a trust gap. We rely on intermediary or third-party ledgers to confirm the accuracy of our primary ledgers, and therefore bridge that trust gap so that we can do business. The bank statement, or the bank that keeps our bank transactions for us, they provide us with a bank statement. That's an excellent example of an intermediary or third-party ledger, and we do a lot to bridge that trust gap by reconciling our primary ledger with that intermediary ledger that the bank keeps. In fact, an audit is simply an opinion that the accuracy of a primary ledger has been verified by comparing it against an intermediary ledger. This all plays to the importance of the balance sheet. The balance sheet is the main tool that we use to ensure that net income is correct. In other words, if we have all of our balance sheet accounts correct, then we will certainly have our net income correct. To add a bank account to the cash book in Sage Intacct, we will want to take a couple of steps, some of which are pointed out to us the first time that we begin a reconciliation. I like to call the initial reconciliation a take-on reconciliation or bank reconciliation. This screenshot that I have at the bottom, and we'll see a lot of this as we move through today's presentation, reminds us that this is the first reconciliation and gives us a field or two or a button or two that are novel to the first reconciliation, such as the beginning balance cutoff date, which would be the day that the last day that a bank account was maintained in another system, and the day before we began to use it in our system, or Sage Intacct. And then a button at the bottom called Initial Open Items, which is where we add transactions that have already been recorded in our take-on or initial bank balance that have not cleared the bank. Additionally, we have a couple of running totals that our bank reconciliation module gives us. One is called the uncleared balance, and the other is called the amount to reconcile. The uncleared balance represents all those transactions that have yet to clear the bank statement. It rarely goes to zero, despite what you see here. The amount to reconcile is the amount of a running total of transactions that have cleared the bank and are on our bank statement, but that we have not actually tied to our cash book. And we do want this to go to zero. Going to zero here represents the goal line, and that's what we're in search of. And we'll show this here live in a moment. Additionally, this screen gives us some tools to help us keep track of where we are in the form of the reconciliation summary. There's 4 totals here: the number of items, check items, and their total that have been tied from the statement back to our cash book, and the number of deposits and the total of our deposits that have been similarly tied back to our cash book. These totals often are subtotals that we'll see on the bank statement, which gives us a way to quickly find out where we are in the reconciliation process. And then finally, the quick clear options gives us the opportunity to reconcile a range of checks in a couple of keystrokes. To take on a new cash account or to load a cash account to Sage Intacct and begin to use it in the cash book requires a couple of things. Number one, we need to find or obtain the last bank reconciliation. We need to set up the general ledger account and the cash book ID that will be related one-to-one in our Sage Intacct instance. We need to post the take-on balance to the general ledger, just adding the total amount of cash that's coming over from the other system as a part of our initial balance for this general ledger account. Then we want to perform a take-on reconciliation, which involves adding the items that have yet to clear the bank statement to the cash book so that they can clear in due time, and then duplicating the last bank reconciliation. We're going to demonstrate these steps and all the sort of ups and downs that are a part of that. It's just basically something that one has to do a couple of times in order to make it part of everyday, part of the everyday work requirements. So let's muddle through this together for the first time under the assumptions of this use case. Today is hypothetically September 1st, 2018, and we've acquired a company as of August in a transaction that closed as of August 31st. Someone either at the company that's the predecessor company or at our company has prepared a manual August 31st bank reconciliation. So we're going to just jump right in. We're going to set up that account. We're going to duplicate the August reconciliation, and then we're going to fast forward to September 30th after we've used Sage Intacct to account for all the activity in our new bank account and then reconcile that bank account. So I'm going to show you a little bit of information that I have prepared in advance, and I've put it in an Excel spreadsheet. This is that August 31st bank reconciliation. I know it's a little bit small. Maybe I can make it a little bit bigger here. But notice that it is dated August 31st, which is the day before we're going live with this bank account in Sage Intacct. The balance in the books for this bank account, which is basically the includes transactions that had not cleared the bank, is $27,846.32. And then we have these items that are outstanding that have not cleared the bank. Typical bank reconciliation. I call the items highlighted take on items. If we scroll down to an area, we will see that there were some transactions recorded in the bank, but not in the books, $285 as a matter of fact. So that our balance per our bank statement as of August 31st is reconciled back to our balance in the books. And this is our take on bank reconciliation. Our take on balance should be $27,846.32, except for the fact that we've had $285 probably booked to the balance in August before as a result of this bank reconciliation. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit and show you that I've totaled that at $27,561.32. The total of the outstanding checks and the outstanding deposits is $17,589.75. These are the key totals that we need to keep in mind as we set up our new bank account. Those take-on items that I identified as outstanding deposits and outstanding checks, I've summarized on this page, our spreadsheet, and once again, they total to $17,589.75. So our first step is to go back to, or to go into Sage Intacct and we need to go to the general ledger, and we need to post our take on balance. Now remember, our take on balance I had in the general ledger, or in the Excel spreadsheet, and because I don't have the greatest of memories, I'm going to have to toggle back and forth. But this is simply a journal entry that I'm dating August 31st, 2018, which is the day before we go live with our new bank account in Sage Intacct. And if you'll remember, well, actually, I've skipped a step here. I haven't shown you how I've set up the cash book general ledger account, but I did that earlier, and I've set it up as account number 1005, and we're calling this hypothetically the First National Bank of Dallas. Now, the amount of the balance that's in this account that we want to take onto our general ledger, I'm going to toggle back and look at that one more time, is $27,561.32. All right, so that's our take on entry, and we need to go against anything, in order to balance it out. So we'll do that, and we'll post. Once again, it's as of August 31st, 2018. I'll show you quickly that I had also set up the bank account in the cash book, or in the cash management module, as Sage Intacct refers to it. It's called the First National Bank of Dallas. And if we take a look at it, there are a couple of key fields that I need to ensure are correct. This is the overarching account ID that the system will use to refer to this bank account. And then this is the default reconciliation mode. There are three possibilities for this field: a manual reconciliation mode, an auto match reconciliation mode, and then my favorite, which is auto match with review. And we've set that to my favorite, which I think will become apparent to you why I made that choice shortly. And then as you might remember, we must have a one-to-one relationship between our cash management ID of FNB Dallas and the general ledger or a general ledger account. And I've chosen account 1005, as we have seen, because we just posted our take on balance to the general ledger. So the next step in the process is to duplicate the August bank rec. And to do that, I'll go to the reconciliation function in Sage Intacct. This should look a lot like the screenshot that I showed earlier and in the presentation. It gives us a picture of the next reconciliation expected for the account that's the default account for the company, and that's the Chase account. But we're interested in the First National Bank account, and once again, it reminds us that this is the first reconciliation. Because it's the first reconciliation, we have a couple of fields that we might not otherwise have. But before I start to make changes to any fields for the take on reconciliation, I'm going to change the reconciliation mode from the default to one of the other three choices, which is manual, because there's really not a reason to auto match our reconciliation, our downloaded statement with our Sage Intacct cash management module for the take on reconciliation. Notice that there are three choices. Auto match with review just means I'm going to import the bank statement from a text file, auto match, and then it will present the reconciliation to that point for my review. Auto match means I'm going to import that same text file, and it's going to, if the amount to reconcile has gone to zero, it will just complete it without giving me an opportunity to take a look. And then manual means that I'm going to trace every bank statement entry to my cash book, and that is what we're going to choose for the take on bank reconciliation. I think I would recommend that for you guys as well. Remember, the beginning balance cutoff date is the date before we go live. That also happens to be, in this particular case, the statement ending date. And here's the button down at the bottom that allows us to load our open items or our take on items. These are items that have already figured into our ending take on balance per the general ledger, but haven't cleared the bank. And what I want to do is get these in. I don't know if you remember, there were quite a few of them, and I summarized them on this particular screen. Let me make that a little bit larger. There's about 13 of those. So that's probably, we wouldn't have enough time for me to go ahead and enter them one at a time. So we're going to choose import. When I click import, it gives me a screen to upload a text file, but it hasn't given me the template yet. So I need to click this link at the top to get a copy of that template. This is the upload template that has downloaded to my Google Chrome browser, and I'm going to go ahead and open that up. When I open it up, it actually opened it up on the other monitor, so let me move it over. This is the import template, and luckily we have our take on bank rec already in Excel format for us. So I'm just going to do a bit of cutting and pasting to populate our take on template. One column at a time. The first column is the date column. And so if I come here and just start copying and pasting, I'll be handling one column at a time. Our document numbers, even our deposits, at least in the old system, had a document number. So I'm going to go ahead and cut and paste those. The next is the amount field. So I'll get that. And then it's nice to have this information on the payee, because that'll become visible to me in my reconciliation module, and might make it easier to clear those items later on when I can. I'm going to leave the description field. Well, I'll just put an entry in here called take on entry. populate that column. The field in the middle called type, it explains to me what I really need to put in there. If it's a check, I need to put check debit, and if it's a deposit, I need to put deposit credit. So we know that these first are called need to have check debit, and then these last need to have deposit credit. There we go. Everything looks good, except this is in Excel format. So I need to save this as a CSV file. To do that, I'm going to save it in on my desktop, and I'm going to call it the 2018-0831 take on entries. Change it to CSV format, click save, and now we're ready to go. With that file created, I can browse for it in the desktop. We just saved it. I'll click open, and I'll click import. As often happens, until I learn the tricks of the trade, I don't get an entirely successful import. I did have one of the take-on items that successfully imported, but I had 12 that did not. So what's going on here? If I reopen this screen, I'll find out that the entry that was successful is check number 2021. So let's take a look and see what might be different about check number 2021 in my import file. Actually, it looks a whole heck of a lot like check number 2020. One of the ways that I have discovered to debug this is to take a look at this file in a text editor. And so I'm going to open this up in my text editor and make it a little bit larger. Come down to the bottom where the actual heavy lifting is done. Notice that check number 2021, the amount column, looks fine. The one right above it, 2020, has quotes around it. So it's this type of thing that sort of trips me up a bit. But once I learn this, I never have to relearn it. The reason that I got quotes is that the format of that particular field included a comma in the middle of it. So it was interpreted as a text field. So I'm going to change that to a general number field and take away those commas. And then I'm going to resave this, resave this as a text file or a CSV file in the same place with the same information. Try to give it the same name and replace it. And go back to the beginning. Except I have this one transaction already entered. I'm going to delete that to kind of go back to the beginning. Click import, browse for my file, choose that updated file without the quotes around the amount, and hopefully we'll get 13 successfully imported take-on items. If I redraw my screen for initial open items, we see all 13 of them. Excellent. So we're headed in the right direction. The next step in the reconciliation process would be to ensure that my statement ending balance is correct. The only reason it knows that this is not, zero, and it would be zero for you, is that I did this earlier today and it remembers what I did. So that's kind of crazy, but just to verify that's where we are, let me go back to my initial bank rec. This is the one we're trying to duplicate, and notice that the balance per the bank statement is $99.71.57. So that's correct. Everything's correct. I should be able to click continue, and I will see that I have an uncleared balance, which is the amount of transactions that are still have not appeared on my bank statement, and the amount to reconcile, which are the transactions that have appeared on my bank statement but haven't been tied to Sage Intacct. So I must have this second field, amount to reconcile, as 0. This will give us an opportunity to talk about the significance of an initial bank reconciliation. The initial bank reconciliation adds our take-on items, and here they are, and doesn't impact the general ledger because these have already been reflected in our take-on general ledger balance. That take-on general ledger balance is a good number. We saw it from our bank reconciliation, so we don't need to be posting in anything to the general ledger in our take-on reconciliation. The auto contra entry, which I did not import, represents the difference between the take-on items, or the net balance of debits and credits to the take-on items. We had more deposits than we had credits, therefore we have a take-on contra entry that just balances out this reconciliation so that we can get that amount to reconcile field to 0. And I have to clear that. And notice that now I'm at $27,561.32. That represents the take-on GL balance, and that is shown at the bottom in another automatic entry that Intacct creates only for the initial or take-on bank reconciliation. I have to clear that as well. So once I clear these two transactions, everything that remains are the outstanding items from my take-on reconciliation. Presumably, some of those will clear in September, and we need to have them there. And notice that my amount to reconcile is 0. So I am through. The next step might be I can save and come back and finish this later. I can save and print out a pending reconciliation report. I can save and just close this screen, or I can reconcile, which ends or closes this reconciliation and rolls me forward so that it's expecting the September reconciliation. I'm going to choose that option, and you'll notice that it also saves me a step by printing my final reconciliation report. So now I have a take-on bank reconciliation in Sage Intacct that mirrors the take-on bank reconciliation that I started with over here in Excel. Exactly the same. So that's good. We're off to the races. Alrighty. In Sage Intacct, I could print this to the printer, or I could download this, and that reminds me that one of the features of Sage Intacct is that it allows us to go paperless. We can store our source documents inside the Sage Intacct database, and one way to do that would be to click on this attachment field and drag the document from my hard drive onto this field, and it would add it. But this particular reconciliation is the September 30th reconciliation. So I've missed the opportunity to do this for the August bank reconciliation, or have I? If I go to the if I go to the View Reconciliations History screen, I'll see that my reconciliation for First National Bank of Dallas is in here, and I can reprint that reconciliation report as well as an outstanding items report. I can also browse for and attach my source document, which might be the Excel spreadsheet that you and I looked at earlier. I would just need to add some sort of reference ID and a name for that, and then choose a folder to put it in, maybe the document folder, then choose that file and upload it quickly to that reconciliation. All right, now I have a source document attached to my take-on bank reconciliation. It may not be the right one, but it's definitely stored there. Now what we're going to play like in our use case is that it is September 30th, and we're going to fast forward to September 30th because it gives us an opportunity to take a look at the regular, not the take on, but the regular reconciliation process. Presumably, what would have happened in the background is that a lot of transactions would be entered into the cash book as a part of average, workflow for September. And I've already saved those, and I'm going to import those into the general ledger. So I'm going to go to the place in Sage Intacct where we import data, and I'm going to choose to import a general ledger transaction to the general ledger journal. And I've already saved this file for us. Let's see if I can find it. Just a second. Yes, here it is, general ledger entry. General ledger entries. I'll show you really quickly what that looks like. Hopefully, if I can find the file. Well, I can't find that file. Let me open it here. Oh, it's a text file. Okay, that's the problem. Okay, I'm going to cancel that. Suffice it to say, it's just another import file, and we could help you in the setup of that file. It's not a problem, and for some reason, it's open on my desktop, and I'm just not able to find it. But I'm going to go ahead and import that file. And I've got 29 debits and credits to the cash account. That sort of represents all the deposits throughout the month and all the checks. Now, what I need is another bank reconciliation, or a bank statement actually, dated September 30th, and from the First National Bank of Dallas. That's what this particular spreadsheet represents. Notice that my beginning balance is the same as the ending balance from the bank take-on bank reconciliation. These are the transactions that cleared the bank as checks in September, and here are my deposits that also cleared the bank. There's that pesky bank fee, and then there's our ending balance. So the quickest way to do this is to import that bank statement. And so I'm going to go to the bank reconciliation function. And I'm going to change from the default account for the instance to our First National Bank account. It's rolled forward the date and knows that the statement beginning balance was $99.71.57. What it needs is a file that I have yet to prepare to import. And so the link for a template is at the top. I think you'll click on this once and download it and open it up. I found it. I got to drag it over. There we go. And then you won't do that anymore. You'll just continue to use the same one over and over. But notice that it's a little bit hard to read, and it has comments that are highlighted in it, which give us explanations that we're going to talk about as we go along. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this file up a little bit by getting rid of that comment. There we go. Change the font so that it's a little bit easier to read. And these are sample transactions that have nothing to do with us, but it gives us a place to cut and paste our transactions. Our transactions include all of these checks and all of these deposits. So I'm just going to go ahead and place those in here. A little narrow. Here are the dates that relate to those. And then here are the document numbers from the statement that relate to these checks. We don't really, and it's normal not to have document numbers on the statement for a deposit that tie to anything in our system. So there's none provided, and thus none copied over. That's all the information that is on the bank statement other than this bank fee, and we're going to enter that after we begin our bank reconciliation. So all that's left really is to make this file import ready. And using the example at the top, notice that all checks have these two fields filled out with, or these two columns filled out as withdrawal and check. So I'll just copy those. All deposits have these two fields filled out as deposit check. And check just means it was not an ACH. And so that's what it takes to complete that. We don't really care so much about the payee, and it didn't come from our bank statement, so nothing to fill in there, and really nothing to fill in for description either. But we do know that this is a sign-specific amount field, which means that withdrawals need to be negative and deposits need to be positive. So we're going to go ahead and reverse the sign on these, copy that down, and then we'll copy it over and paste those as values, clean up this field. We also know that Sage Intacct doesn't always like commas in our amount field, so we're going to change all this to general format. That looks good. We've got a couple of fields here that are rows here that have nothing to do with reality. And what we end up with then from here down to here is exactly what our bank statement has as cleared items, except for the bank fee. These items up here were just our examples. Let's delete those. Now, once again, we have a file that's ready to go, except that it's not saved as a CSV file. So I'm going to do that right quick. Save it once again in the desktop under reconciliation, and we'll call it 20180930 bank statement. It will be a CSV file. We'll save it, and we'll run over back to Sage Intacct, choose that file. The fields that matter are in red, and Sage has helped us out by reminding us that probably our next bank reconciliation after August 31st is going to be September 30th. We do want to auto match with review, and we need a statement ending balance. So we'll have to go back to our bank statement for that and find out what that is. It's $48,828.85. All right, seems like we're all ready to go, so we will click continue. And we get an error. And we get an error for a really hard to figure out reason. But what I've found out that always fixes this is to open the file up that we just tried to import and resave it with the text editing program. So I'm just going to make a quick change, then click File, Save. So basically just saved it with a different program. And I'm going to have to go back through and add my 48,825 dot, well, I can't remember, dadgummit, 48,828.85, 48,828.85, and everything is correct. We've got the same file ready to go. So I'm going to click continue. It happens pretty quickly, but it does a great job of importing that time. This screen gives us a bunch of information at the top. Remember our uncleared balance? That's all the transactions that are in Sage Intacct but haven't cleared the bank account. The amount to reconcile are those transactions on the bank statement that haven't been tied back to our Sage Intacct cash book. Here in our reconciliation summary, we see that 562,000 or 22 items of checks have been tied back to our Sage Intacct cash book. This whole screen is divided up into two. It shows us our bank transactions that we downloaded here on the right, which gives us just a list of transactions and keeps us from having to go back and take a look at our bank statement in order to come over here and tick off the items that match in the cash book. But if you'll remember, these totals sometimes help us find out where we are in the process. So if I go back to my bank statement, I'll see that my total amount of checks is 562,000 and one penny. Well, that particular number is the same number that we cleared. So we know that all of these transactions have now cleared. On the deposit side, not so much. In fact, nothing cleared. But if you'll remember, we don't really have document numbers that come from our bank statement that tie to anything in our Sage Intacct cash book. So one way to overcome that is to cancel. It costs me nothing to cancel because all I'm going to do is import it again and come back to the validate deposits on field. And notice that it's validating by amount and date. And the reason it got no matches, even though we had amounts that were tying 1-to-1, is that the date that it cleared the bank was a day later or two after the date that it was deposited in Sage Intacct. So what I need to do is remove this value as a validating value and only validate based on amount or match based on amount. So I need to grab my file again, which is the September 30th bank rec. I need to enter in 48,828.85, and once again, I can't really remember if that's exactly what it is. Yep, 48,828.85, and I'm ready to go. So I'm going to click continue, just repeating what we did moments ago. We've got the same 562,000 that have cleared of checks and debits, and then we have 601,000 that have cleared for deposits. What were our total deposits from our bank statement? 601,000. That's a great thing. And our amount to reconcile now is only $285. And we can go back to our bank statement and recognize that number. It's the amount of bank fees. So now we get to see how to enter a bank fee at the time of reconciliation. Over on the right-hand side, there are several quick links to different parts of the program that allow us to enter transactions directly from the reconciliation screen. And this one corresponds with an interest or bank charge. So I'm going to click that screen. It's going to open up. It's going to default to the correct bank account. It's not going to default to the correct date because it defaulted to today's date, but I want that dated September 30th. It gives me a choice of a service charge or interest earned. I could enter some information here, attach a transaction to it, or just go ahead and enter the $285. So I'll do that. I'll click save, and it will redraw the screen, and it's still not reconciled. So that means I need to come down here and find it and clear it. And it could be this one. No, this one. No, this one. All right. The reason, oops, I went the wrong way. So it was not that one. All right, now we're at 0. The reason that you see so many of these, 285 up and down several different times, is that I entered these in practice this morning. And so I can clear these as well because they have no impact on the reconciliation. They come to 0. The one that made a difference was this one, or maybe it was the one dated September 30th, right? So we're at 0. That's where we want to be. And we still have $4,523 in Sage Intacct that has yet to clear the bank. That'll happen in October. All right, we're through with this bank reconciliation. It's really easy. I could have imported the $285 by clearing all of these from my practice rounds. They will not appear the next time, as will none of these cleared transactions the next time. So I'm going to go ahead and click reconcile. It's going to print my report to the screen. Well, it didn't do it this time. So I'm going to have to go to the view reconciliation history and print my reconciliation report. for my second bank reconciliation. Actually, it did print, and I just was hidden. I couldn't find it. But it's a little more involved, and that's why entering in a transaction or entering in a bank rec by importing the bank statement has so much value. We've got 11 minutes left in our presentation, and so I would like to go back through some best practices and then what to do when you run into a roadblock. When you're setting up a take-on reconciliation, I recommend that you duplicate the last bank reconciliation in the old system. An alternative could be to make the first bank reconciliation in the new system be the September 30th reconciliation, but that reconciliation is not cast in stone. It's a much harder target to hit. So I recommend, even though it means 2 reconciliations instead of 1, duplicating the last bank reconciliation as the take-on reconciliation. In addition, I recommend that you attach statements to the bank reconciliation. And remember, you can use the reconciliation history screen if you forget to attach the bank statement or other source documents in the very beginning. If you are doing multi-bank transfers, you can either use the bank transfer function in cash management, which allows you to transfer money between 2 accounts, or you can enter a journal entry, because all entries made to the general journal will flow into the cash management module to be reconciled. And if I am sweeping account balances from location, in a multi-location environment, it's sometimes a lot quicker to enter it in as a journal entry, or even import it as a journal entry, because they will be distributed to all of the correct bank accounts based upon the general ledger that has a one-to-one relationship with the bank account in cash management. I'm going to pause for just a second to check my file. Alrighty. Don't fear reopening a closed reconciliation. Sometimes there's a good reason for that, and it's something that I'll show you here in a moment, but basically it just unclicks the reconcile button, which would allow me to unclear or clear. Let's just say that I had failed to reconcile all of those practice entries, and I didn't want them to roll forward to October to confuse the next person. I could reopen the reconciliation, click the rest of those, and then click reconcile again. But reopening a closed reconciliation is a feature of Sage Intacct that gives some additional flexibility to the process. Join and be active in the Sage Intacct community. Sage Intacct provides a social media site that allows end users of Sage Intacct to exchange information, and it has a lot of information around bank reconciliation, lots of tips and tricks there as well. What happens if the amount to reconcile does not come to 0? Often the dates that have been entered in the setup screen, the screen that I begin the reconciliation process with, are not correct, or maybe I'm comparing to a report, or comparing to, or maybe I have included some transactions that cleared the bank, but I posted them into maybe the future in Sage Intacct, and that's a really confusing problem and makes it very difficult to get the amount to reconcile to 0. So that's the first thing that I would look for. If it's a take-on situation, have those 2 auto entries. One's called auto contra, the other is called auto entry. Have those been reconciled and disappeared? Is the difference 2 times any amount, which might mean that I've made an entry as a debit which should have been a credit? Does the trial balance equal the general ledger balance, equal the book balance or the cash book balance for that particular cash account? If not, that's a situation that has to be resolved. And then, is the default reporting method set to accrual when the Sage Intacct instance has been configured for both the cash and accrual basis? This is an important thing to check and make sure it's set to accrual in order to keep everything working the way that you want. What happens when the bank balance doesn't equal the general ledger? This is actually a normal situation because the bank reconciliation is going to filter on document date, and the general ledger posts as a posting date. Often these are the same date, but not always. And so it's not unusual for the bank balance to not equal the general ledger balance. What about the trial balance not equaling the general ledger? That's less straightforward, and I recommend that you make sure that you're entering the same report parameters for both reports. Often, a dimension choice one way or the other will make a big difference in the bottom line of a report. If you can't satisfy it that way, I would stop and write down everything that you've tried, maybe take some screenshots and get up and walk around the building, or take a day off, or come back to it later. Often this whole process of writing something down and then stepping away from it and coming back will yield an idea that will, you'll turn around and you'll say, gee, I wish I'd thought of that earlier. If that doesn't work, then that might be an opportunity to submit a support case to support.BTerrell.com. If I've made an error in my reconciliations, I can reopen the bank reconciliation. And I need to show you how to do that. Essentially, to do that, I need to act as if I'm doing the next bank reconciliation in line and do it maybe manually, since I don't have to supply a file with it. Oops, I'm on the wrong account. Let's go to First National Bank. Once again, set it to manual. And I don't have to fill in anything because I'm not going to do anything. I'm only going to click continue so that I can have access to the reopen last reconciliation button. When I do that, it opens the reconciliation to the point right before I clicked reconcile. Reconcile is not available for me now, but the minute I hit save and continue, or let me cancel that. Yeah, save and continue, it's going to make this essentially unreconciled. And I can go in here and I can clear everything. I can undo everything, or I can, so now I can save and close. And when I come back to the setup screen, it's going to assume that the next bank reconciliation is September 30th. That's one we've already done. I could start from here. Nothing has happened except for the $285 bank entry will be there this time. To reverse a bank entry, I need to go to where I would have entered that if I'd entered it manually. And here it is, September 30th. Here's the one I did earlier, but this is the one as of September 30th. I click reverse. If I click reverse and give it the same date as the date I posted it, then it's gone. And this is how those additional $285 entries were occurred. Alrighty. So we've covered both reopening a bank reconciliation and reversing an entry made during reconciliation. Other errors can be these initial take-on entries, those entries that we imported way back at the beginning. What if I want to get rid of some of those? If I've finished the bank reconciliation, I need to reopen it, and then I can go in and delete those. You saw me delete one at the very beginning, check number 2021, and that was all good because we re-imported it shortly thereafter. However, the best way to do that would be to post a journal entry, probably, to reverse that item, and then you could clear both the entry in error and that opposite entry, and they would net to zero, and it would have no effect on your next bank reconciliation. Reversing bank or credit card fees, well, we just showed that where I reversed the $285 bank charge. Fixing errors such as maybe wanting to assign a new general ledger account to an existing cash book, I would recommend you not do that. Be best to start from scratch with a new general ledger account and a new cash ID. If multi-currency is a consideration for your bank reconciliation activities, the rule of thumb is to always enter or import the bank entries in the same currency as the bank account. There is a base currency account and there is a transaction currency. There's a base currency and a transaction currency. And if the bank is tied to a transaction currency that's different than the base currency, enter all bank reconciliation information in the transaction currency and let Intacct do the conversion for you. So I'm looking for questions that may have popped up in chat. Thank you for joining us for this training webinar. For more information about BTerrell Group or Sage Intacct, please browse to BTerrell.com, where you'll find lots of ways that we can connect. Have a great day.